So I want to invite each of you to close your eyes for a moment. Hopefully not for the entire service, but just take a moment to recall a time in your childhood. Just picture yourself as a little kid. And see if you can remember what time felt like to you. Did time pass slowly? Did it go quickly? What was it like? Now open your eyes and try to keep awake, as Jesus would say, for the rest of the sermon. So I don't know what it was like for you to do that, but I remember when I was a little kid, I felt like I had all the time in the world and time was moving very slowly. My mom had 6 kids. My dad was away most of the time. She did not even have the bandwidth to contemplate overscheduling us. So I had lots of time to wait around or wander around, kind of just watch what was going on. Sometimes I was digging up potato bugs in the yard, or my brothers and I were exploring the abandoned warehouses in the Navy Yard, which maybe wasn't the safest activity. And I remember I used to collect those little silk seed pods that float through the air, and I made a little shoebox house for them, and I named each of them. But there was a lot of time, I gotta say. And I used to go through these stacks of magazines that my mom would subscribe to, including literature from the Christian Science Church. And emblazoned on each of their publications were the words, "What I say unto you, I say unto all. Watch!" Exclamation point. As a kid, I couldn't make any kind of sense out of what that phrase was all about. As I got older, I thought, well, maybe that's sort of like the New York Times, all the news that's fit to print, or to give the news impartially without fear or favor, as we say in Chattanooga. What I say unto you, I say unto all, on a journal, on a journal. Our translation today says, keep awake. And this morning, we find that Jesus spoke these words to his disciples as he described the coming of the Son of Man, an event that was supposed to happen before that generation passed away. Yet today we still wait, and we are still called to watch. Will you pray with me, please? May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Our gospel lesson this morning comes from the 13th chapter of Mark. This is a famous chapter. It's sort of called the mini apocalypse. It's a chapter full of predictions of destruction and desolation, scary images, probably inspired by the destruction of the temple around the time of the writing of this gospel. And every year we ask ourselves the question, why are we reading this on the first Sunday of Advent? We hear the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. Stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers of heaven will be shaken. And the message seems to be, when you see all these things happening, know that the Son of Man is coming. Keep observing, be aware. And as our hymn said this morning, let all mortal flesh keep silence. Well, we've all seen a lot of signs. I think every generation feels like it's about time. We see the earth shaken with natural disasters in the last few years. This was apparently the hottest year ever on record for the earth. We see our political structures threatened as they never have been before, or maybe they have been. We saw a pandemic spread chaos across the world, but then they had a pandemic 100 years ago. We see war in the Middle East, and in Europe. But again, that's nothing new. In the midst of the upheaval, the words of Jesus offer us a message to stay vigilant, to watch, and to wait. The time has not yet come. Now, waiting is not a popular activity. I was going to ask the kids if they liked waiting, but I think the answer is obvious. Not many of us are patient, and I know myself to be quite impatient. You can ask Macon. I don't like to wait for anything, a restaurant, a cup of coffee, entry to a museum. If I see a line, I usually just turn around and walk the other way because I really don't like waiting in line. When my family moved to Italy when I was in my 20s, I learned something new. You don't have to wait in line. We were taken on a tour of Naples, and the guide took us to an espresso bar, and we thought, where does the line form? Oh no, there's no line. You just move in towards the front and get there as soon as you can. Well, this was music to my ears. I'm not particularly proud of this, but I found lots of ways to avoid lines. And these days, I would say most of us think, well, I can pull out my phone and maybe I can be productive while I wait. Yet I do wonder about the quality of attention we are bringing to any of our experiences when we use our devices to occupy us so much of the time. Sometimes, well, I'll say I practiced this week in preparation for the sermon. I want to be very truthful with you. I noticed when I was feeling impatient in a line this week, and I'm sure we'll all be in a lot of lines in the next few weeks, and I just said to myself, yes, line, I accept you. I say yes to waiting. I don't know, it really helped. It changed the quality of my waiting experience. I really started to open my eyes and notice what was happening instead of noticing my internal impatience so much. And as we enter the season of Advent, a time of waiting, this ability to wait and to watch is what life is calling for. Our nativity story is full of people who are waiting. Zechariah is waiting to be able to speak. Anna is waiting to prophesy about the Messiah. Elizabeth is waiting a lifetime to give birth. Mary is waiting to bear the Christ child. So what is the difference between them and us? I want to suggest this morning, perhaps it is the attention or quality of waiting. These folks in our nativity story are waiting with a sense of promise, waiting with a sense of hope. And I was struck when Lyndon and Morgan lit the candle of hope this morning that our hope is in Jesus Christ, who promised to both return and to be with us always. Emmanuel, Christ with us. So we have hope that God's promises will be fulfilled in the future, and even in the midst of chaos and destruction, this knowledge that God is already with us in the present. And our hopes have already been fulfilled. I get the sense that God's time is not linear and our own understanding is quite limited. As Jesus said in our gospel lesson this morning, no one knows the time except the Father. Advent invites us into this waiting, a way to live hope more deeply each day. And to wait in hope is a radical spiritual stance. It counters our culture of hurry and productivity. It counters our own human nature that demands we take action immediately, even when the time is not always right. Mary and Elizabeth Anna and Zechariah are waiting. They are waiting, but they are not wasting their time. Jesus reminded us to watch and to keep awake while we are waiting. And this means waiting is an active thing. It's active. Henry Nouwen writes in his book, The Path of Waiting, the secret of waiting is the faith that the seed has been planted, that something has begun. Active waiting means to be present fully to the moment in the conviction that something is happening right where you are, and you want to be present to it. Waiting becomes a way of focusing our attention on the present moment while maintaining our hope. And that's a mysterious concept, so let it soak in this whole week. The sacred art of waiting asks us to pay attention to the now. Now, many of us are waiting for a change, something to shift in our lives. Maybe we're looking for a change in our work situation. Maybe we're looking for a good outcome for a health concern that we have. A family waits for a mother to awaken from a coma. We may be waiting as a loved one heals from surgery. Some of us are wishing for surgery to bring a welcome change. Others are waiting for a shift in their relationship with a partner or a friend. Some of us are waiting to find this partner or friend. Our Pilgrim Church has been waiting to grow and flourish, and this morning, I think all our prayers have been answered. We are becoming, and I believe we are already what we are meant to be. And every moment we have together as a community is in itself the meaning of church. There doesn't need to be something else out there that's more. Dale maybe said to me this week, our church has moved from survival to potential. I kind of like that. I mean, I think we've all had phases of our lives where we move from surviving to potential. And perhaps that's the kind of destination in itself. We are all waiting. And one thing about waiting that I've never liked is that waiting asks us to let go of our illusion of control, to let go of our wish list about what life should be, and instead experience our lives with an open-ended attitude of hope. And for me, hope is that declaration of trust that when all else seems to be falling apart, God is still at work. Now, hope doesn't mean passively accepting abuse or standing by while others suffer, but it does mean alertness to life as it is, observing the signs and understanding that we are called to wait, and in that waiting to live each day with hope, living with and for the not yet ever present Jesus Christ. So the other day, as we will at this time of year, I was running from thing to thing. I really didn't think I could slow down because I had so many tasks on my to-do list. And on top of that, I was getting ready for a trip, had lots of thoughts of anxiety about all the things. I'm sure none of you can relate to this. But between appointments and events, I did take a moment to breathe and to pause. And I even quickly rushed to go to a yoga class, because that's often the place where I can slow down and become more receptive to the Spirit. But I don't think you need a yoga class to do that. You just need to slow down and be more receptive. And at one point, towards the end of the class, an inner voice seemed to say, "Will you wait for me?" It was like a question that came into my mind. Will you wait for me? And I thought, well, I've gotten way ahead of myself. My mind is full of worry about a lot of things that have never happened, living a future that hasn't arrived, and I've gotten ahead of life itself. And I realized in that moment, Advent is asking us this very same question. Will you wait for me? Will you trust and allow for life to unfold? Will you live Advent each day without getting ahead of yourself? Will you practice the sacred art of waiting? Will you wait? Anne Lamott once said, "Hope begins in the dark." The stubborn hope that if you just show up and try to do the right thing, the dawn will come. Advent begins in the darkness. Like a sailor assigned to stand that night watch, we are all called to stay awake, waiting for the dawn, remembering the words of Jesus, our Emmanuel. What I say unto you, I say unto all, watch. Amen.